For over 1,000 years, European life was intensely local. People lived out their days within a few miles of where they were born, huddled around a small fire in a world bounded by deep forests and harsh winters. If anyone had questions about what lay beyond, the church provided the only authorized answers. The horizon was something to fear. Then, in 1453, the massive walls of Constantinople fell to the Ottomans. This military collapse severed Europe's last direct link to the ancient Roman world. It also triggered a massive migration. Scholars seeking refuge flooded west into Italy, carrying with them ancient Greek and Roman texts that had been locked away from Westerners for centuries. When these lost texts hit the wealthy city-states of Italy, they fueled a massive intellectual revival. Suddenly, scholars stopped focusing entirely on theology and the afterlife. They started translating ancient wisdom and exploring humanism, a philosophy that placed human experience, biology, and the physical world squarely in the spotlight. Once people started looking outward and asking their own questions, they lit a fuse. Over the next 3.5 centuries, every fixed idea about geography, science, and authority would systematically break down, creating a domino effect of unintended consequences. The systems we recognize today did not arrive through a calm, organized transition of ideas. They emerged from the compounding, chaotic collapse of ancient power structures, all triggered by the fall of a single city in the East. With minds open, the maps followed suit. Hungry for direct access to wealthy Indian Ocean trade routes, Portuguese and Spanish sailors pushed past the known coastal boundaries of West Africa. They built sturdy caravels designed to survive the deep ocean, physically breaking through the geographic limits of the medieval world. In 1492, Christopher Columbus attempted a shortcut to Asia by sailing west and accidentally slammed into an entirely disconnected landmass. He returned to Spain with exotic crops, gold, and captive native people, initiating the Columbian Exchange. This massive transatlantic transfer of agriculture, animals, and disease permanently shattered the medieval understanding of the globe. While the physical map expanded, the cosmic map broke completely. In 1543, an astronomer named Nicholas Copernicus published mathematical calculations proving that the Earth actually orbits the Sun, and not the other way around. This directly contradicted the Church's strict doctrine that humanity sat at the exact center of the universe. The authority of Rome was fracturing, and a German monk named Martin Luther found the weak point. Angered by the Church's corrupt practice of selling indulgences, essentially tickets to heaven, Luther drafted a list of 95 severe complaints. He argued that the Pope was a middleman and that the Bible was the only true authority. Crucially, he had access to a new technology, the printing press, which turned his arguments into immediate bestsellers. Going against the Pope usually meant a quick execution, but Luther survived, protected by local princes and buoyed by massive public readership. His survival proved that Rome could be defied. The resulting Protestant Reformation cleaved European Christianity in two, stripping the Catholic Church of its absolute monopoly on truth. First, the map was rewritten, then the cosmos, and finally the ultimate spiritual authority. Within a few generations, the unquestioned pillars of medieval life were dismantled, leaving a highly volatile power vacuum across the continent. That power vacuum immediately filled with blood. European rulers fractured along Catholic and Protestant lines, plunging the continent into decades of brutal, shifting conflicts. This violence peaked in the 30 Years' War, a grinding campaign where permanent armies fired muskets into a dense, choking cloud of gunpowder smoke, leaving up to a third of Central Europe's population dead from combat, disease, and starvation. To stop the total annihilation of their populations, exhausted leaders agreed to the Peace of Westphalia. This legal settlement drew strict border lines across the map, establishing the rule of state sovereignty. It meant every country, large or small, now had exclusive control over its own internal affairs and religion, free from outside interference by emperors or popes. But drawing lines on a map is cheap, defending them is expensive. To secure these newly sovereign nations, rulers had to maintain professional, permanent standing armies. Equipping tens of thousands of soldiers with artillery and muskets required stacks of coins that medieval tax systems simply could not generate. The Dutch Republic and Britain found a creative solution to this liquidity crisis: the Public Joint Stock Company. By allowing everyday citizens to buy shares, they pooled public money to fund vastly expensive maritime voyages to Asia and the Americas, sharing both the massive risks and the massive profits. This early corporate model rapidly accelerated global trade. Cities like Amsterdam and London transformed into financial powerhouses with bustling stock exchanges. Yet, this incredible wealth was heavily reliant on human exploitation, driving the brutal efficiency of the transatlantic slave trade to extract resources from the New World. In the desperate attempt to survive religious civil war, European leaders accidentally engineered the two most powerful forces of the modern era: the fiercely independent nation-state and the debt-fueled, globe-spanning engine of capitalism. Those early corporations quickly gained armies and navies of their own, transforming sovereign European nations into sprawling global empires. Soon, these empires were clashing in highly expensive proxy conflicts, erupting in multiple theaters across Europe, India, and the Americas simultaneously. Managing this level of global warfare required rapid, unchecked decision-making. Rulers like France's King Louis XIV stripped power away from local nobles and centralized it completely within the crown. Surrounded by the ornate ceilings and crystal chandeliers of Versailles, Louis declared himself an absolute monarch, claiming his authority came directly from God, answering to no one on earth. But absolute power meant absolute responsibility for the bill. Decades of aggressive foreign policy, maintaining mass armies, and sustaining the staggering luxury of the royal court left the French state drowning in debt. While the crown bled money, the intellectual landscape shifted again. The very same printing presses that once distributed Martin Luther's religious protests were now churning out the ideas of the Enlightenment. Intellectuals in coffee houses openly argued that the law, not a king, should be supreme, and that every individual possessed natural rights to liberty and equality. Absolute monarchs had effectively engineered an unsustainable trap. They were demanding crippling taxes to service massive royal debts, extracting that money from a population that was simultaneously starving from crop failures and reading viral essays about human rights. The breaking point came from across the Atlantic. Eager to humiliate their British rivals, the French monarchy borrowed a staggering 1.3 billion livres to fund the American Revolution. The debt was ruinous. When the king attempted to raise taxes again, while bread prices skyrocketed at home, the desperate citizens of Paris finally snapped. In the summer of 1789, starving and furious Parisians surged through the cobblestone streets to storm the Bastille prison, seizing weapons and executing the royal guards. This violent explosion of public anger rapidly dismantled the ancient feudal system, stripping the church of its lands and the nobility of their privileges. The revolutionaries drafted a new framework for society. They replaced the ancient hierarchy with a written constitution outlining basic human rights. Almost overnight, the legal categories of kings, lords, and subjects were erased, replaced by the radical idea of a nation composed entirely of free and equal citizens. Fearing foreign invasion and internal collapse, the new republic took extreme measures to ensure the old system could never return. King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette were convicted of treason. Their executions by the newly invented guillotine served as a permanent, bloody severing of the medieval hierarchy in France. By the time the dust settled and the 19th century arrived, the framework holding medieval Europe together was gone entirely. In its place stood secular governments governed by constitutions, clearly defined international borders, highly professional militaries, and factories rapidly accelerating the industrial global economy. The modern world is not the product of a polite, planned upgrade. It is the aftermath of a 350-year chain reaction, a relentless cycle of discovery, rebellion, and warfare that systematically burned down the old world to build ours.